Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to the Library Tour of Doom, a library tour being conducted, in fact, nefariously suggested, by Lord Ganesha and myself, that takes you through every book in my collection. Not bookcase by bookcase, not shelf by shelf, but individual book by individual book, and not just the books I have on my shelves now, but all the books that I've ever had on any shelves, anywhere. So we will be some time. and for these last few days of March, I thought I would concentrate on murder mysteries to coincide with March Mystery Madness, a big booktube event being hosted by myself and a bunch of other booktubers in which we celebrate murder mysteries all throughout the month of March, one of March's many big booktube events. I've been having a blast watching all the different profiles and lists and whatnot. And I wanted to go back today to the early 1990s. This is Knaves, Templar by Leonard Tourney. This is an Elizabethan murder mystery. It's part of a batch that one of you sent me. One of you sent me a whole stack of. This author was prolific in this series. I don't know if I have them all, but I have quite a few paperbacks of these now. And these star Matthew Stock and his wife Joan. Matthew is a constable of a minor variety. And in this particular book, Knaves Templar, a bunch of law students are dying in the Middle Temple. and it looks, each one of them is carefully arranged to look like a suicide. But it quickly becomes apparent that they aren't and couldn't possibly be. And Matthew and Joan have to sort of figure it out. They have to sort of figure out what's going on. And I got a batch of these. I think I'd read a couple of them before when they came out. And I have ebooks for a few of these things. But when one of you sent me this batch, I gorged on a few of them, and came to like them quite a bit. These are not very long, but they manage to be very atmospheric. They reminded me a lot of the Brother Cadfael mysteries of Ellis Peters, in that you really get a sense of the atmosphere, the feel of the time period, without being beaten over the head with lots of exposition, and that's lots of fun. Maybe a little bit less fun, but also interesting, certainly thought-provoking in terms of, picking your brain on the subject, is that they also reminded me of the Ellis Peters books of the Brother Cadfael mysteries, in that they raise a question with me that I can now pass on to you, which is, readers of mysteries, lovers of murder mysteries, what do we do with murder mysteries set before forensic science? What do we do with such things? I mean, I know that technically would mean Sherlock Holmes, but maybe not exactly. And again, Sherlock Holmes, those stories get an exception because Holmes is essentially a supernatural figure. But what do we do with stories like this? We have a very low-tier constable. Okay, so he has, in the murder mystery world, he has police authority of a very limited kind. He has police authority. So that's one aspect, right? You have two aspects of any murder mystery. How do you figure out who did it, and how do you bring them to justice? And in the case of Matthew and Joan here, Matthew has the ability to bring someone to justice, at least partially, provided they're not any higher on the social pecking order than he is. In Elizabethan England, a constable could not arrest a whole bunch of people. Even if he knew they were dead bang guilty, he couldn't arrest a member of the gentry, a member of the nobility. He couldn't do that. Couldn't even arrest a commoner whose standing was high at court without risking his life and his livelihood. No constable would have done that. And this one doesn't. So, but at least in a limited sense, this character has the ability to bring the guilty to justice, but no ability whatsoever to find out who the guilty is, not with anything like the surety that we would like to say, that we would like to see in a murder mystery. I guess, I mean, obviously it doesn't deter my enjoyment, because I just talked to you about Judge Dee, and I love the Ellis Peters mysteries, and a whole bunch of others as well, ranging all the way from the 19th century all the way to the 5th century BC. So obviously, it's not a deal breaker. But I wonder what you think of it. When I read books like this, I always wonder, those are the two elements of a murder, and you've got to have one or the other, right? And yet there are plenty of successful murder mystery series that don't have either, where the main character has neither the ability to determine who did it, except anecdotally, and no ability to punish the guilty. Lord Peter Wimsey, a really good example. There are plenty of others, though. I guess that was on my mind when I read. I got a batch of like 6 or 7 of these things. I've read 3 of them so far. We'll be getting to each and every one of them on the Library Tour of Doom. This is not covering the whole series. We're doing every individual book. It's his command. But it raised that question for me from March Mystery Madness. What do we do with mysteries set in the past when there is no forensic science? There are no fingerprints. There's no phone records. No nothing like that. And yet, so many murder mysteries are set under such circumstances where it's just the little gray cells that are going to figure things out, and somehow make that watertight for court, right? Because you want there to be some sort of comeuppance. You want the villain to pay for it. I'm just curious to know what you think of that. It's obviously, again, not a bar, because there are a lot of murder mysteries I love that are like that, but maybe I'm wondering if maybe a lot of the ones that I love even more are the ones where both those elements are in place, where the main character has the ability to figure out who done it forensically, dispassionately, non-anecdotally, and also has the authority or knows the authority to immediately punish them once that truth is established. I don't know. Maybe that spoils me one way or another. I just thought I'd throw it open to you and also recommend this series. The books that I have read, I really liked. So I'm going to wrap this up for now. That is your Library Tour of Doom for today. We'll see what the next one is. It'll be a murder mystery, something along those lines, but who knows what it'll be. Either way, I'll see you then. Thank you, Book 2.